Many thanks to Henry Daly for joining us here at the Handicap Weights launch. Cheltenham Festival not far away, Henry. I've got to ask you first of all about the big gun in your stable at the moment, which is Hillcrest, a horse with huge amounts of potential and class as well. How likely do you think are we to see him in the Albert Bartlett?
It's really simple. That the answer to that is, of course there's every chance, but we just haven't made our mind up yet. He's got really two options as to where he can go at the moment. It is the Albert Bartlett or the Sefton at Aintree, and it's essentially it's about the fact that he ran only 8 to 9 days ago, and of course it's because of what went wrong here on Festival's Trials Day, which was just one of those things. It all went a bit not quite as planned, shall we say?
Yes, yeah.
And therefore we end up running in the Prestige, which I'm delighted that he won it, and he won it nicely, and everything went right. But what it means is of course he run over 3 miles on heavy ground 3 weeks before the festival, which is probably not ideal. He didn't appear to have a very hard race, but really we're just giving him the time to see how he is and then decide what we're going to do.
And he's come out of that race fine?
Yeah, absolutely fine. He blew for hardly at all after the race. He's come out, he's absolutely not a bother on him since, but it's a sort of timing factor more than anything else.
Any talk of possibly running the Ballymore completely out of the window now, do you think?
I would think it's highly unlikely. I mean, unless something extraordinary happens and nothing else decides to turn up, well, I mean, that's just not going to happen. And I think realistically you want to be soft heavy ground if you were thinking about that. I'm not saying that in time we might not go back to 2.5 miles. You know, he's won over 2.5 miles, so it's not really a big issue. But I think if you're going to run in one of these big novice hurdles, it looks more sensible to run in either the one here or the one at Aintree. Simple as that.
And I know it's a really big cliche, and we talked about that. Well, you talked about that to Nick Luck earlier on about minding him for next year, because anything that he does this year is probably a bit of a bonus, given the fact that he's such a size and scopeable type of horse. Chasing is going to be his game, probably. You would have thought so. I mean, you never know. We haven't schooled him over a fence. You would never know until you do it. But he certainly gives every impression that will be his forte. He's got. I know. I've said this before. He's got a very good brain for the job of racing. He's not particularly fractious. He takes it all in his stride. He's competitive, you know, and all those sort of attributes will stand him in good stead when we go novice chasing. But I think we're having quite fun novice hurdling, so I'm not too worried exactly.
about it. Yeah.
Finally, with him, if he does go to the Albert Bartlett, he's currently the favourite. Do you see him as having a favourite's chance if he does line up?
Well, everyone else does.
That's the main thing, I suppose.
I mean, look. Lots of people
How
who are a lot cleverer than me have worked out what he's done and things, and it really, of course, you'd love to think he's got a great chance, and that's why you're running. You're not running because you're going to make up the numbers. You're running because you think you've got a great chance.
Let's talk about one horse who's almost certainly going to run. That's Rapper. Got a couple of options.
He's got 3 options. He's got the 3 mile 6, the National Hunt Chase. I think that is almost certainly a non-event now, just by dint of what's probably going to run in that as best we can work out. He's therefore got 2 other options, the Ultima and the Kinmure. And there are lots of sides to this, but really I think obviously what will come to play is the weather forecast. You know, he just wants nice ground. I don't think he wants a particularly fast ground, and he wants to have a nice run at the target. He's not overly big, so it's again a bit of a funny one. It does slightly depend if Paul runs. Frodon will keep the weights at a nice weight in the Ultima, whereas in the Kinmure, I think we need to claim 7 off him because he'll have a lot of weight otherwise.
Alice Stevens is likely to be right.
I would think if that happens, might be the way we go, but it's a very difficult one to see. Again, at the moment, we've got to try and work out which one we've got our best chance in as to what is going to turn up in each of them. We know Kim is aiming, does he know, and all that sort of thing, and Frodon will keep the weights where they are, probably if Paul goes down that line. So there are lots of connotations to this that again, we need to just see how it pans out as to which way we go.
And you're likely to have a runner in the Pertemps on his Vic?
That is the plan. We tried fences, and oddly, it all, because of the circumstances, he was rated at 150. It means he cannot run. There are no handicaps really. He's not overly big. You're not going to run him a top weight in a handicap, and therefore you have to run. And there are very few handicaps that he's actually qualified to run in, because you have to be at their class 3 and below. You can't run a class 2 and above, and all that sort of thing. So you get a muddle with that. Then you run in an ordinary novice chase, and he's a horse who needs a big field. Well, in this country, funnily enough, you might have spotted something. We haven't had a big field novice chase yet this season, and therefore it just didn't suit. And unfortunately, we then ran him in a handicap here at trials, and it was all too much for him. So we've taken the view, gone back over hurdles, and got him qualified at Huntingdon, and with the plan to run him off a mark of 141, which has managed to win off a mark higher than that over hurdles here.
And very impressively as well.
And nicely. So you would have thought if we get a good run at the target and he turns up on his A game, which is my job, we would have a chance.
And lastly, from your Cheltenham Festival team, Fortescue could be a runner. I know you're keen possibly on saving him for the National.
Yeah, I'm in a slightly odd position with him as to whether he does or doesn't get into the National is really what it's about. I'd love to run him in the National, and at the moment it looks like he'll either get in by 1 or miss it by 2 right at the bottom end of it, and looks that tight. He's in the Ultimate to give ourselves some options as to if it becomes more apparent as to what's going to happen with the National between that. It probably won't, but it gives us that chance. We've got the chance of the Scottish National as well, which unfortunately again this year is the week before entry, so again that might get a bit tricky as to whether we work out what comes out at the forfeit stage, which will come in between Cheltenham and entry. It's just a bit of an odd situation we've managed to get ourselves into, and trying to work out the best way out of it, really.
The way he ploughed on at Ascot suggests that a race like the Grand National is right up his street.
The way he jumps and travels and stays, you'd have thought that is the right sort of race for him. But of course, it's entry. It's a bit different.